I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue our discussion on Advanced Dungeons & Dragons AD&D. This time, I'm going to begin talking about things that a Dungeon Master will have to know about. This is going to be all about Dungeon Mastering, or Game Mastering if you're doing a little bit more of the general role-playing genres. But in particular, let's talk about things for the DM. So the first thing we really want to talk about is ability scores and your players, because this is an important section to talk about, because it also talks about balancing out your team and controlling your players a little bit. So, DM's Guide gives 6 methods of choosing ability scores. Each one has their own advantages and disadvantages. You can read through them and choose the one you think you want best, which fits organically. I personally prefer something like 5, which is roll 4 dice, take away the lower, arrange them as you want. That's more and more preference because I have this modern day idealism that fits back into that 5 or 6 are my ideal techniques, because those are the more modern techniques. Anyway, the older techniques still exist here, but they're a little more difficult. Once we have everybody with characters, though, we have to start talking about the different types of characters and different types of players, because this is very important. We have to talk about the super characters. Super characters is a term this book uses that if you're looking for a more generalized term that most people would recognize nowadays, it would be a munchkin. It's someone that seeks out power at the cost of the game. Power for power's sake. They want the most powerful, most ridiculous, most overpowered character, regardless of what that does, balancing it out for other players or for the game itself. That's what a super character is. And again, we call it a munchkin. That's what it is. It's someone that just does the most ridiculous things for the sake of being very powerful. Now, recognizing that someone is a munchkin sometimes can be more difficult, depending on the power of the rest of the team. Effectively, if the team is overall like average to a little more powerful than your average characters, then recognizing someone standing out amongst them is a lot harder than if everybody's a little more on the below average side and they're really above average, that they're super great powerful. Recognizing it there is easier. On the other hand, as I said, the other way, not so easy. But once you've recognized that you have a munchkin or super character in your group, there are a couple of things you can do to deal with them. You can have them. You have to talk to the player. That's the first thing you have to do. You're recognizing that someone's being a munchkin. You have to talk to them. You have to talk it out. The first thing you have to say is like, look, you need to do something about your character. You can either A, do something to weaken your character. This could be removing a magic item, something like that. Doing something that overall weakens the character. You could also get rid of a special ability. Now, this special ability could be something that was gained through part of the storyline, or perhaps another dungeon master gave them, something like that, removing that ability. If neither of these seem to fit, then have the player make another character. That's as simple as that. Have them make another character. Making another character is not a difficult thing, and you're basically asking them to either tone it down or do something else, because they're unbalancing the game. On the other hand, you have the helpless character. Now, in truth, there are very few actual helpless characters. No matter how bad you roll, no matter how weak it is, most characters can still be played. The time it would really be helpless is if you don't qualify to play anything. You don't have the ability scores to play anything. It could actually happen. Then at that point in time, something else has to be done. It has to be fixed. But considering that most of the time that's not going to occur, you don't have to necessarily worry about that end of the spectrum. What you have to worry about is a player that, for whatever reason, if it's bad luck, or it's just the way that they built their character is not the way they really like it, that they feel helpless. That's what you're dealing with. You're really dealing with the player feeling helpless rather than the character being helpless. Dealing with this, you have to discuss it with that player. You have to talk with them. Changing a character, re-rolling a stat, something like that can be an option, but try to challenge the player first. Try to change their mindset about the character. Say it's like, look, how about you think about it this way, that this character has these deficiencies, and you're challenging yourself to play them. You make it that the challenge is what the player wants to fight against, rather than fighting against the character itself. You're attempting to push away their negativity in a more positive direction. That can in itself be a challenge, but it is a goal that you want to do to sort of fix that mindset that the player has. Now, it can be difficult dealing with these players and helping them. But if you do want to do things like altering ability scores in order to help a player, there are guidelines to doing this. For one thing, you don't want to raise an ability score above a minimum. Because let's say your player A wants to play an elven fighter and he doesn't have the scores for it, for whatever system you had for rolling scores. Then you have to start looking to what you can do to help out. Let's say they only need 1 dexterity. And it's not difficult for you to say, oh, your dexterity was 1 higher. That sort of thing. Or your strength was 1 higher. Maybe they had a really low strength and they really wanted to increase it up. You might bargain with them a little bit that way, switching scores and things like that. But let's assume that you move it up to the minimum. You don't want to raise it above that minimum required for the class because then you're unbalancing it. You don't want to raise anything above a 15, period. There are only 2 classes that require 15s. They're really special classes. You really shouldn't encourage people to play one of those. They can play something else. Giving people ability scores so they can play with it, it removes the rarity in this case. You also shouldn't raise any ability score that the character doesn't need. If someone's playing a fighter and wants to be a smart fighter, and they have a really low intelligence, don't raise it for them. You're just going to be like, maybe they're the idiot savant type character, that they do like genius things even though they're a complete moron. Tell them to do something like that, to play it differently, to play up a little bit of the strengths that they want while continuing to keep the weaknesses. And also, think twice before raising any ability score if another class in that group they already qualify for. Meaning, if someone wants to be a ranger and they qualify for to be a fighter, convince them to be the fighter. It's just because they want to be a ranger. Give some kind of excuse. The book gives a couple of them, like you're allergic to certain types of trees, or you never quite made the cut for getting into being trained to be a ranger by this guy that was training rangers. You know, that sort of thing that makes it that it's an excuse as to why the character would be something lesser but still within that group, because they already qualify for something within that group. Now, let's start talking about changing ability scores other than what you would do. Players can change ability scores with wishes. A wish can raise an ability score by 1 point per wish up to 15. If you want to raise an ability score above 15, 16 to 20, it will take 10 wishes per point. So for raising my 15 dexterity to a 16 dexterity, I would need 10 wishes to do it. It gets a little crazy, and you're going to need a crap ton of wishes to do it. A little ridiculous amount of wishes. Now, on another note, a player could have more than one character. It is not an impossibility, and certain games may call for one player to be playing more than one character. Unfortunately, it is an incredible challenge. Not only for you to keep that player in check because they're being basically multiple personalities, but also for that player to keep those 2 characters separate. They got to keep all the equipment, the mindset, the knowledge each would have separately. So just because one of my characters has noticed there's a dragon over there doesn't mean they're necessarily going to mention it to my other character, who might be far enough away that they're not going to hear about it until it's too late. The other one wouldn't be ready for it, and keeping that separate can be very difficult. It's a reason that you should think twice before having one player be more than one character, and it should be used sparingly and when absolutely necessary. So that's it for today. I talked about DMing today just a little bit. I talked about it in regard into your players and their ability scores. I talked about the different ability score choosing systems, the different types of players that reflect the ability scores they have. I went into some details of how to control them and keep them in line so that they don't go crazy or distract from the overall enjoyment of the game. Next time I'm going to finish up talking about being a DM and the ability scores with your players and move into talking about other things that you'll be doing as a DM. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave it in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows your support for the channel, the Empire, and the work I do. And until the next time, I bid you farewell.